Hi everyone, kia ora. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. This is our last panel discussion of Here and Now. Māori female street artist. Oh, I said that really bad. Sorry about that. Māori hine and the public art. And today with us, I'm so glad, I'm so happy that today with us is Janine Williams in the Studio 30. Welcome, Janine.
Oh, wow.
Yes. She came all the way from Auckland to be with us today. Charles is also with us behind the scenes. And well, Here and Out, it's an exhibition and a mini festival, the result of a series of reflections based on the journeys of 9 female street artists from 5 different countries during the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. This exhibition aims to create meaningful connections, and now we are in the Studio 30, right next to the gallery, right next to Toi Poneke Gallery, where the show it's there, and you can come and watch it until the 22nd of April. So yeah, we are here today with Janine, and soon I hope Miriama will join us as well. And we're going to start talking about a lot of different things about your experiences in the streets during this 20 years almost. And a lot of things related with being a female street artist here in Aotearoa. So welcome, Janine. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So, kia ora. I could do an intro, but keep it light. But for Janine, tōku ingoa, a.k.a. Diva, or Lady Diva of TMD Crew. So it's really nice to be here to celebrate not only wahine Māori street artists, but all of those categories all at once, which is pretty special. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. First to start, because I didn't introduce myself or I didn't introduce which are the artists that are part of the show, I will want to remind that we have an amazing show right next door with Dream Girls Collective work, so Gina Keel, Soy Ho, Miriam Grace Smith, Janine Williams' artwork as well from Auckland, Fluto from Christchurch, and from other countries as well. We have artwork from Peru, so Meki from Peru, Gleo from Cali, Colombia, Paula Ticay from Santiago, Chile, and Caratoes from Hong Kong / Belgium. She's a nomad, so from the world, basically. This show is about female and street art, and with us today, Janine. Janine is part of a TMD crew. Janine started painting in the early 90s in the streets in Auckland.
Old, as you introduced me.
It's a good experience. A mom of 5 and a visual and amazing.
Mom of 4. But yeah, we've got our 3 other 2 nephews and a niece with us full time. So busy household.
And also a great contemporary Māori visual artist. You are not just but you are not only a street artist, but also a great visual artist. So today I would like to ask you about your work and about all those years of your journey and how it's been. How did you start it? Can you share with us a little?
Gosh, it feels like a long story. I guess my graffiti career started in 1998. So I experienced graffiti and I wanted to know more. I didn't have any prior understanding that graffiti existed. I came across the art form and I just fell in love with the art itself. And then I found out there's this whole culture that sits behind graffiti art, hip hop and street art and whatever, all these different parts of it. But it was the energy of the art that, I was really drawn to. So that kickstarted my experience in the graffiti world. So I live in Auckland, in Tamaki Makaurau in New Zealand. And at that time, the graffiti scene was really busy, very saturated. Like our city had a lot of graffiti everywhere. obviously TMD crew was already formed, so Charles and another whānau member, addict, they'd have this conversation and they formed this crew and collective that I stumbled across after a few times painting on the streets and going to shows. And then so I was invited to join that crew as a graffiti artist. So I wasn't in a relationship with Charles or anything at that time. From there, we started painting more. The crew grew. We got married, we had kids, and it continued. And that transition into, not only opportunities here in Aotearoa, but internationally. And then, over time, just things started developing, I guess. So, it's really nice to see the progression and the journey of graffiti since, was it 24 years ago now?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And also you mentioned that back in the day, Auckland was full of graffiti. There was a lot of graffiti everywhere, which is it's pretty interesting because 20 years has passed and that's not the situation anymore. So it's hard to find actually a lot of graffiti, right? Like, how do you say that transition has, or what happened, or how the streets were back in the days when you started painting?
It was, I'd come into the scene a lot later than, a lot of the early Auckland writers. They're there right in the early to mid-90s, and I'd come towards the end. And they had already established, obviously writers before that, but the culture was strong and the spaces were still run down and grimy. And I think a lot of people forget, it's like New York, but you get this picture of New York now, but you forget that 60s, 70s, that it was trashed. It was, and it's the same with Auckland. It's like it's just over time. Everyone has that gentrification, but it's sort of true. All the spaces are built up and tidied up. And, so it was this, pretty crazy playground, I guess, for a lot of writers all at the same time. We didn't have trains run on a Sunday. And so writers would walk the train tracks and meet each other, or they would have painted the night before, and you come together and then disperse for the rest of the week, and people would trash the city and talk about it at the next. So whereas now everything it's painted out, or everyone knows what it's like now. But it's quite full on, but it was really colorful, and we liked it. Obviously the councils and stuff had a different story.
Oh, cool. And what brought that teenager Janine to the streets? Was there teenager Janine? Yeah, you were what, 16 years old?
I was 18.
18 years old? What brought you to start painting?
I'd always been into calligraphy and fonts, which is a strange thing to like, but I'd really loved that growing up. And then my dad passed away when I was 18, and for me, I have one younger brother, and I, just sort of didn't really know how to process that in my life at the time. So I was just hanging out with people and on the street, and and so that was just more about trying to find your way after such a sort of traumatic moment for myself. And I just came across, like, literally one night just hanging in the city with friends, my cousin, and there were these writers there drawing in a black book. And so I literally just went, what's that? And I saw it and just went, there's something about that. And so the question was, how do you do that? I was like, you got to get a spray can and you got to go paint. It's like, okay. And so I got spray cans and started. And that's how it started. So I didn't know that I didn't even know that tagging existed, which sounds really funny because I grew up in Otara, which is like South Auckland, and you'd think, you grew up in South Auckland, but if you're not looking at it, you don't notice it, kind of thing. So I'd never seen it, and it's like, you've got to go and tag, you've got to paint trains, you've got to, that's how you do this. Like, okay, all right, great. for a walk every night and figure it out. And then it was like, oh, meet us at a show. And my first show I ever went to was it was the Fresh show, which is just off K Road. And actually Charles was one of the artists in that show, and a whole bunch of different people like Otis and Inu and all these people. And it was the moment where I went, oh, this is a world. I like this world. Like, I get it now. And then that's sort of what happened. So it wasn't really like, oh, I want to be famous. That wasn't the point. And I think that's a funny sort of segue into a career when graffiti's about yourself, because people are like, oh, put your name up and it's about you and you get fame. And for me, it was like, oh, it's just what you do. That's what I've got to do to love this. And yeah, so it's been a funny journey, I guess, or a different journey to some. Yeah, so yeah.
Wow.
A bit different.
So there were a lot of related events back in the days, like that promote artists, like the exhibition you just mentioned. That was happening quite often back in the days.
Yeah, so it's quite funny. Like, I think there was an underground movement of, you know, people who understood that this was art, and for many people, you know, in the 90s, you know, graffiti wasn't art yet. It was overseas, but definitely not in Aotearoa in a strong sense. Like, oh, graffiti is art and it's good. It was just graffiti is graffiti. And yet there were these people putting on shows, and not long after, I think, maybe about the mid-2000s, must have been 2005 or 6, I can't remember, but well, obviously the hip-hop summits, like 2000, 2001, 2002, all those sort of events went, oh, this is a legitimate art form. People like Elliot or Askew, who brought international writers over and connected New Zealand with the international scene, you know, it widened your perspective about the art form being a legitimate thing to do. And so, there were people that believed in it and put in a lot of hard work, like very hard work to establish, not that people think graffiti should be professional to progress, but opportunities where you could paint graffiti or express graffiti in a way that, you know, legitimized that this is like my expression, and tagging, bombing, yes, but there's something more about what that means. And I think TMD as a collective all felt the same way. Yeah, so, you know, it wasn't just because you're trying to be famous. You know, the bar had been set already. It's like, do your best, you know, paint your best, try your best. And so so that plus the few people that believed in it meant we got to do some other things. And so, just started pushing forward.
And is that how the transition through pieces and murals came for you?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's painted with Charles or Askew or, you know, people like Bobby now would be, you know, you'd know, or the older Auckland writers, you had to be fast, you had to paint big, and you had to paint well. Like, there was no option, you know. And so very quickly, like, if you're in something like TMD, like the crew, or you're around this, you know, sort of group of people, you can't just, you know, paint some basic throw up and think that you're going to get away with that. Like, there was not an expectation, but this sort of state where you knew, I need to do this better, I need to do it bigger, I need to do it faster. And I'm always trying to keep up with it, because it's just like, I'm learning on the spot, you know. I had, you know, Misery was around, and she's the only female writer that I had a relationship with. I don't know any other female writers at the time. And so, you know, you progress from tagging my name to doing throw-ups to basic outlines on a train to pieces on a train, and then it just, you know, and then walls, like everyone would know what that process is like. But I think it happened fast, because it was just like, come on, you know, keep up. And a lot of people go, oh, you know, you're a female, maybe people were a little bit more lenient, and it was like there was no like I'm a female writer in my own head. I'm just like I'm a graffiti artist. I have to do graffiti as a graffiti artist. Oh, and I happen to be female. Whereas a lot of people are like, oh, you're a female graffiti. Do you know how to use a spray can? So what?
Really?
Yeah. Like literally, like people would be like, do you know how to use a spray can? It's like, what does that even mean? Like,
Well,
oh, you're a
watching
girl. Yeah, like, oh, I didn't realize that meant something. Yeah. It was really strange. But I mean, this is the 90s when there were like, a couple of female graffiti writers. Whereas now, you wouldn't even think about it. This is a female show. Yay! Of graffiti writers. Like, woohoo! This is amazing. Well done, team. And Mango Collective. Yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot. Yeah, that's so interesting those kind of things. Like, and how was actually your first experience with a can? I suppose that's
my first ever experience.
Yeah, with a can.
I very clearly remember. I was like, you must get a spray can and learn how to paint graffiti. So, okay. And so I didn't know where to buy spray cans because I'd never heard of them before. So I'd met a few of these, local riders at the time at a tunnel in Manukau, South Auckland. It's like, you need to walk into the big dark, this tunnel under the park, and you have to paint 3 letters. And I was like, okay. It's like, and here's the spray can. And so that was like, okay. And then, and that was literally my first time.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
what letters did you write?
I was like, I don't know what to write. So like, just think of 3 letters, and it was like a A and I honestly don't remember the letters, but there were 3, and they're just some really wet bubble looking. Because I just looked around the tunnel, like, oh, like that. Oh, okay. Like, never seen it. Yeah, and that was
so much fun.
my first experience. Yeah, it was really fun because I was like, wow, like, is this what a spray can does? Yeah, and then it very quickly was like, I'm going to do this more, like every day. Just, yeah. So it's such a funny, strange experience. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And well, that was kind of when you were doing a lot of graffiti and those kind of things. So how did you move from that to paint murals with Charles? How was that transition for you back in the days? Like how long?
Back in the
happened?
days. So many days back.
How many?
We had started like TMD went to Miami in 2010 for primary flight, which was like in Wynwood back then. The Wynwood district was just this really rundown, crazy area in Miami. It's nothing to what it is now. It's this fancy, beautiful machine, they think. But we had gone when it was still pretty grimy, and we had fundraised here to go as a crew and fly over and paint at primary flight. And that, I think a lot of those opportunities had come about because the crew had won, the world champ, like the Right for Gold things in the mid-2000s where Charles and all the guys went over. And so those relationships were built. And so we went there, and I'd never seen murals on scale before that time because I'd only really had a New Zealand experience, an Aotearoa experience. And for me, just seeing the work on scale, on the side of a building or, it was just like, what is that? Like that? Because there's always a thing in TMD, like, how do we progress this? How do we make this better? And for me, being a mum, because all of our kids were really young for a long time, I didn't paint as much as the rest of the crew. Obviously, being a mum, new baby, the mum, baby, and new baby, new baby. It's like, and then they were old enough that we could travel. And we came back from that show, and we had done a job before we went to Miami, for Kiwi Rail, which were all these portacoms, and we had painted some murals, like a commission for them. And then we came back from that show, and we just sort of, it sort of just all fell into place. It was like, that's the next step that we want to add to what we're doing. And so we started getting, commissions or people asking us, could you paint something? And these birds had appeared in our artwork for the Kiwi Rail project already. And this sense, like, I feel like we're meant to paint birds. I don't know why. And, we had this discussion, and Charles is really amazing. He just really got into it and researched and started painting them more and more. And then I guess that expanded our mural opportunities, because people are like, oh, do you paint birds now? Or do you paint murals now? Like, oh, yeah, that too. And so that became a bit of a focus for a while. So it's, I think, full-time, maybe 9 years or now since that decision, or 10 years. I'm a bit lost in time. And just been painting consistently that whole time. Yeah. So it's just gone from that to that to that to that. And now it's expanded into heaps of different other things. So
wow.
Yes, full on.
a lot of things to ask you, like so many different things you've made on the culture. Yeah. So amazing. I was talking with one of the team guys yesterday. He was talking with Andy from Down the Road. And I was like, I remember we were in Avondale, and Charles and Janine and Bobby, Holly were painting this mural for the movie. And then thinking on that as well, like how did you support, all these different parts of the culture support each other when they were like starting and, I don't know if it's starting, but, like popping up from their different places. And that's so cool. So many different parts of the same culture together.
Like I think Aotearoa is small enough for that to happen. Like everyone tends to know what's going on generally, and back in the 90s or early 2000s, it was even smaller, so everyone would just help out, or do what you could. If I'm a graffiti writer, I'll paint a banner and you do a DJ set at this event, and someone will break dance at that, and it was really good. And then, sort of lost that a little in the last, sort of 10 years. It's sort of, that culture has, been, I guess, diluted because there's so many other things. Whereas before, it was just like, that's all we had every day. Every weekend. Yeah.
Well, but now all of you had evolved into your own different practices. So that's also really interesting to see. Like, how could you tell us, what could you tell us about your own practice now, like as a visual artist? What's the kind of work you are developing now? And how do you think that will shape with all these experiences you told us?
It's so funny, like, because I didn't, I know obviously Charles didn't, and quite a lot of the writers didn't go to art school or didn't do any, I guess, traditional art or preparation towards their arts career. So there was no art school background. The art now is this point in time that I get to express all those different moments of my life and all the different things that I've experienced. Like, when you go, and I think it's real life experience learning for myself, because you can prepare 1, 2, or 3 years and do a degree and call yourself an established artist, or now I'm qualified to do art, and you wait for some gallery to pick you up, and that's amazing for those people. But for us, we traveled the world and we met people and we did projects, and that just sort of built our education of the art. And now, producing something is just a natural response. So it's not created by someone else's framework, like this equals that. And, if you do this kind of exhibition, it'll get you these, accolades, and you'll get to this point, There's never been that in most of our minds. And I say ours because I always think collectively with our crew, but for myself, just producing something that's my own story is how I can describe what the art looks like now. And that story is really connected to, mine and my husband's journey in learning who we are as Māori or mana whenua in Auckland. And personally, what does it mean to be Māori, to be a wahine, to be an artist? What does that look like how do I say that with my art is what I'm trying to do. It's not, I don't want, it's never because I want someone to buy something or I want to fit into someone's framework. It's just, what do I feel I need to say right now? And so those, I guess those opportunities I choose carefully because they're not artworks where I want, attention from. That's not the point of the art. It's more, how does this connect to where I am as a person? I'm 42 now, we've been and done quite a lot of things. How does this say what I want to say right now about my life? And so the art is that at the moment. And so a lot of it is experiences or, the work here for the show. It was like, as an artist, how do I feel about the show being in this place? And what happened in the whenua here? What happened? What story do I feel really compelled to connect to make the work to put on the wall? Not, I need to paint something cool so you think I'm awesome. It's like,
You don't need to do that for us to think that you're awesome.
I don't. But then, it's like, that's not in my thinking at all. It's just, and I guess every artist's journeys through what they're doing with their art at different points. So that's, a lot of it is, it's very connected to my personal journey and strengthening who I am as a Māori in Aotearoa with my background. What does that look like now? It's just, this is what's coming out.
So knowing all of that, how the Soul came out, your piece on the Here and Out exhibition.
It I just ripped it out of my heart and I put it on the wall.
It was really funny because a couple of people, like one of the artists came to me and was like, "Hey, Janine saw her piece and it's in the opening." I was like, "No, it's called Soul." Oh, got it.
Oh, like as if that. Oh, I know it's sort of a play on a few different emotions that I have. I just finished a work for Sculpture in the Gulf, which is a biennial sculptural exhibition that happens on Waiheke, and it's an island up in Tamaki. And my iwi of Ngāti Pawa, I whakapapa to that island, so my ancestral connections are to that land and that whenua, and I produced a work for that show. And so that show was on, and I'd used pickets in the fence structures, and I won't go into that work, but the fence pickets were really representative of a good representation of what I was trying to say. And that story is really long, but the use of pickets for this show was a continuation of how I was responding to the spaces where the shows were located. So Sold, yes. It's like, oh yeah, she succeeded. That's like, anyway. Sold was, it's a funny space because I'm not mana whenua here, and I would never want to take away the stories of mana whenua, the people that, ancestral lands are here. So that's not what I was trying to do, but I did want to tell my perspective on that loss of the land here as Māori, as a Māori person. So, Sold is very directly related to the New Zealand companies. The story is, it's a long story, but this land is actually the first, what I've researched, is the first area in Aotearoa where the land was divided into, a very specific spaces that were sold by the New Zealand company back in England. Before they were actually in possession of the land. So they were pre-sold with this dream and idea that you will buy the land on this amazing new colonized area in the colonies down in the South Pacific. And so, a lot of people bought the land and had come. I think the first ship, maybe it's the Tory, I can't remember the name now, but it arrived here, 1840, I think it was, and it's the first space in Aotearoa where there are maps, and they'd lobbied with the government and with Parliament in England to sell this area here before telling Māori.
Wow.
And it was sold. And so that happened. So it's history. So if anyone, New Zealand history is going to be taught, but a lot of people do not know the story of what we know as Wellington, who was a duke. He was this dude, and we won't get into that, but, Te Whanganui Atara, or people really just don't know those stories and don't understand when they hear something like, oh, why are Māori frustrated or angry about that? Oh, well, if you look, you'll understand. Like, can you put that in a modern context and imagine someone on the other side of the world selling your home right now and then turning up and going, oh, could you get out? Because I sold it. Like, that's the modern framework of that. Like, move on now, we've sold the land. It's like, what? Oh, what? Oh, because we're establishing a city. Why? And so sold is that. Like, for me as an artist, it's like, I need to say something about that. And so the pickets, if you know what a picket does, you'd use it to mark out where a house, where you would build something. You put a picket in and mark the area, and they've done that, and the maps are really, really sad when you see the maps that they're drawn and lobbied. They're all in these very straight, linear quads of acre and quarter acre lots, and which is why my work is just very symmetrical. Like, it's very a direct, I guess, representation of that cross-section in the land. This is ours, it's sold. And then the use of, the colour, just there's things as Māori where certain colours connect to certain things. And I don't need to share that, but that's for someone to experience. But so, it's full on, but it's not in a way where I'm, that angers me, but it's in a way where it's like, I'd like to use art to invite you to that conversation. Yeah, that's how I want to use it. So it's like, does this make you go, I sort of want to know a bit more about that now? I think I want to go look at those maps. I think I'm going to look at the history. That's what I would hope happens from the art. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, it's art, but it's a conversation, maybe. That's how I see it. Yeah, and so, that's pretty much what that work is. Thanks, Janine, for having it.
No, it's really interesting to hear from you what it's all about, because as you said, art is always open to different interpretations, but with such a precise work that show the history of this place, it's like, or at least the Māori perspective, your perspective as an artist, how do you interpret that as well? So it's like, it's really, it's completely different to hear from you that to just come into the gallery and see it, and, different colors, different shapes could take you to different places as well, So thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I'm completely sure that everybody that is watching this is also going to be wanting to come and wanted to see those maps as I want to see them also. And for those that haven't come yet and haven't seen that amazing work, it's right next to the room we are right now in Toi Poneke Gallery until the 22nd of April here and out, showcasing the work of 9 amazing female street artists from 5 different countries. yeah, we have with us today the amazing Janine Williams that came all the way from Auckland to be with us today. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's so special. So this is our last panel discussion of this whole project. So a project that we've been working on together for quite a long time. So it's really exciting for me, and I suppose Wolf and Antonio, which they're right here with us, agree. It's a really beautiful way to back there. It's it's a really beautiful way of closing everything, all these panel discussions, because the exhibition is still open until the 22nd of April. You can come and check it out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Janine, for those that just joined the Facebook Live on Toi Poneke Facebook, we are here today speaking with Māori Wahine and with Janine Williams. She's been telling us a lot of her amazing experience during these years painting in the streets as a contemporary Māori artist, as a graffiti writer, as a street artist. What else?
I don't know. What else?
What else have you done? Janine, you're amazing.
Oh, thanks. It's a long time to fill heaps of years, and so there we go. Different things.
And now you are on a different journey. You and Charles are committed to as full-time students of Māori, Te Reo Māori.
We took a year off to focus on picking our language up and taking on the wero, or the challenge of learning Te Reo Māori. And so, I think it was the right time for us to do that. There was something in us that was just missing, and so we had to do it. So, I sort of describe it as the hardest, most beautiful thing I've ever done, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's full on, but it's beautiful. It's we sort of slot in a bit of mural work and commercial design work in between the studying, and it's really and you would know when you can speak a language that talks or speaks from your soul rather than just your head. That's sort of how we feel about learning the language this year. That's really great. So
I can't wait to see what's coming up in your work as mural artist together with Charles after this journey of studying the language. Because you're always telling amazing stories with your murals, and I suppose that's a really important part of it, right?
It's funny. Like the more we traveled overseas, whether it was a festival or different things, your awareness of what's happening, in the mural world or the street art world, really gets, I don't know, just for us, it defined what we needed to do with our murals. I mean, we went to the Festival of Pacific Arts in 2016 with the Aotearoa Creative New Zealand delegation as artists, and I think it might have been the first time that a mural was part of the Aotearoa contingent over to those festivals. So we went to Guam or Guahan, and we painted the cocoa bird, which is then native bird, and it was the first time that people had ever seen their native bird ever. Didn't know it existed. It's extinct in the wild. They only had a few in captivity, and we had painted a mural because what we do, if we're overseas, we will only paint subject matter that is from that space. So we'd never paint a bird that's from New Zealand in Guam or Guahan, because it's not their story. So, we'd talk to local elders and, wildlife people, and they're like, go for it. So we'd do that first, always, on any project. And we painted the cocoa bird, and there was nothing really official ready, but we'd organised a blessing, and hundreds of people turned up, and someone bought the bird, a live cocoa bird.
What?
And like old people were crying, and young people had never seen the bird, and it's their like national bird, and so we're here. There's a video online of it, and the mural connected all these people to what they experienced in the past, but also these people that had never experienced or connected to their story. And for us, that was a really significant moment, because we'd always told our own stories here as an artist. But when we went overseas and we did that, that unlocked a really different part of us. And so Charles had this thing like, I'd really love to go through the Pacific and use our skills to partner with, local people, elders or wildlife, environmental people, and do the same. And so that the murals just, I guess, continued that conversation. So it was like, oh, there's a bird in that island now. And that was all about relationships and partnering. And so it's such a funny journey when you produce art, firstly about the relationship you're building or the connection you're building, or the story you're saying before the artwork. So that was something that we really tried to implement quite early, and it's just led to so many crazy things.
Yeah.
And you've been on heaps of this with a camera, watching our process.
True. We had this conversation just a couple of times before.
What? Just a couple of times. You're the best, so of course we want you there.
Thank you. You are. And just talking about working with communities, since you mentioned it, I've been watching your work like closely, and the way you relate with communities before you come into the space and paint, like you did in Lower Hat, for example, before, like 1 year before the TMD exhibition at the Dows, you painted, I don't know how many, 3 or 2 murals in Lower Hat, working with kids from the community as well. Well, not kids, but, young adults of the community as well. Supporting all this street art mentoring program that PIPA organized as well as the Lower Hat art advisor when she was doing that. So how is that experience for you? You shared a little bit about that experience overseas, which seems pretty powerful. But in New Zealand, how is working with young artists or people that have interested on it, and like giving them the real, the reality behind being a street artist, like telling them the tools they'll need to develop in order to present a design to a client or to paint a mural, like the techie stuff or all of that things that you show them how to do.
Yeah, I think being Māori, it's a natural thing to do for myself and for Charles, is to build the relationship, the whakawhanaungatanga, or the hononga, or the connection with someone before you even think about telling a story. Because, for ourselves, when you're in the public realm, street art, we come from a graffiti background, so we know what it means to just put your name wherever you like and don't care about what happens to the person that receives the artwork, like their fence or the train. You don't think that way as a graffiti writer. And so for us, I guess we got that out of our system. And when we transition into the space, we still do graffiti, but not on trains. We get permission now, the art form. But the murals and that whole thing have always been about people first. And we did our first workshop in 2000 in South Auckland, and we're a bunch of taggers here, do a workshop and teach them good things, and everyone, you've got to teach them to paint off their tags and their mess because that'll teach them a lesson. Like, I mean, that's pretty much what most people do with taggers. And that sort of sparked an idea for us. It's like, well, couldn't we educate them on something better, or couldn't we do this? And so that led to, quite a lot of years of workshops with different groups and, youth prisons or community groups or, local, just local community organizations. We did quite a lot of years of doing those workshops. And you quickly, I guess, establish that your art affects people. And so when you're going to paint a 5-story building in a community and leave the mural there and fly back to your country, how about the community that lives there, that stares at that all day? Did you consider how they felt? Or did you consider that the story connected to them in some way? Because they get to live with it. It's not like art that you collect. Oh, it's an art show. I buy this artwork. I love it. It's in my collection now or on my wall. Street art or murals sit in someone's community. And so for us, that I guess it was like a need. Like we needed to make sure, and we haven't always had it right or perfect, but at least try to form the relationship in some way before the artwork. So whether it's a phone call, hi, kia ora, I'm, do you know someone's phone number? Really want to make sure that we're connected with someone there. Even overseas, we'll do the same thing. Charles will, for a mural in whatever country, say it's Tahiti, for example, with the Unu'u Festival, Charles would make sure he's in contact and ringing the Bird Society people, and he's talking to them. What bird should I paint? And then he'll ring local elders to make sure, that story's right. Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, then we'll start designing. But then we'll send you the design so you can look at it and connect to it before we just come and paint it in your community. And so that ownership of the art, transfers from yourself as an artist to, this is our mural. And that's the only way you're going to build that. Because if you just go in and expect everyone, and it's not, not everyone's going to like it. People are like, I hate that mural. It's like, sorry. It's like, we're sort of connectable. Some people, we don't want to make everyone happy. But, there's got to be some, for ourselves, it's how we feel. That, as Māori, we understand what it means when someone comes and takes something and forgets to tell you. That's pretty much the story of Aotearoa, and you don't want to do that as an artist. So, relationship is like 60 to 70% of the artwork, really. I think it was something that, I did. There was this a lecturing opportunity, and I lectured to the secondary teachers in Aotearoa. And they asked a question about, what would you say is the end result of great art? When I'm sitting in a classroom and I'm teaching my kids, my students about art, how do I tell them their art is great? These are the kind of questions. And from a street art perspective or graffiti perspective. And it was like, the art began right at the start. Like, because people think and this is me, this is my thinking. People might not agree, but art tends to be the end product. Like, that's art. For me, when I look at art, I think, me and Holly have a relationship, and she and you had a talk, and you and them thought about a show, and you came up with this name, Here and Out, and you designed it, and I'm sure she sent you the digital design. You're like, that's great, Holly. You sent it back, and you made sure that's the art. And then that's the end product. And for us, that the art is the process of painting a mural, and the mural sits at the end of the art process. Yeah. And so for me, it was like trying to explain that to someone who sits in a class and teaches someone art. learn how to do art. Like, cool. Yeah, when you're on the street, when you're in a community, when you're doing graffiti, the art is the entire process. And people, that's I guess, sort of the privilege of growing up in a time where graffiti was a community. It was a world. You were immersed in it. You lived it, breathed it, drew it, painted it, felt it, drew it on your jacket, or whatever it is. And that was graffiti. And now graffiti's, that's graffiti, the tag. Not really. It is, but it's not really. Yeah, so
The process
it's a
must
long-winded, like, blah, 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 but yeah, it's quite hard to explain the importance of that relationship building in the art that we do, but yeah.
I mean, it's public art, right? It's and public art is made of art and public, so both parts are really, right, like important. Like the process must be, I suppose, as important as whatever the people can see by the end of that process. Because we were talking like right before in the last panel, the previous one, how people actually see the mural or the artwork, or they see that, but they can't see what happened behind it, or all the work that it took to make that art possible. Especially with massive murals, there's a lot of people behind, like not just, I mean, the organizers, the artists that comes with the idea, but as you were saying, like you do your research as well, and there's more people involved in all of that kind of shape what people can see in the end, but that's just a part of it.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
And it's funny that I think, we're coming, again, it's my perspective, but as the world becomes more saturated with street art, because it's not only is it popular and the art world knows it now and the community knows it now and urban developers know it now, everyone wants street art or murals, and which is really great. It's very positive. The challenge would be, what are you going to do with that though? Like besides just continuing pushing your profile, which is amazing. Yes, you do that as an artist, but is there some other way that you could use that art? And it's happening around the world. There are people that are doing amazing creative projects and communities everywhere where it's changing the atmosphere of a space in a really positive way. But also I tend to see the destruction of spaces too, in a way where it's like, we're just going to have a festival there and let's fly 20 writers or artists to there. And they're going to paint things that make no sense to anyone else, but their Instagram profile is amazing. like cool, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so for me, it's a funny time in the arts where it's so popular and so amazing to see, because for so many years it's like, it's not even art to anyone, or people put some really hard work organizing shows. People like Street Prints, the crew, or everyone in Christchurch. There's so many years of hard work. But also, should we have a little bit of responsibility to what's going on? Again, my perspective. Other people might think something different, but it's a interesting space. Street art, graffiti, the merge,
and especially in these times, like now that everything is more on the digital than in the real, because the real, not the real because digital is also real, but physical, it's a little bit more restricted with all these pandemic situations. So people tend to share or way more now on the digital, or create more in the digital. Right now we are having a live stream because we can't have a, a in-person talk. So it's like, it's pretty, I think we are living in a pretty interesting time to, kind of use all this new technology and tools that we have to just, make yeah, I don't know, like make the spaces more inclusive in general.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's so many artists the last 2 years have been really difficult for a lot of people, festival organizers and artists and people who tend to, have lost so much of their income or their career. It has been really hard, but at the same time, it pushes you to, think new and think fresh. And yeah, it's funny, like you get to a point and it's not like you become stale, but it requires something to push you some other way. And so, yeah, digital's a big part, but definitely missing the hands-on of something, which I think a lot of artists will be doing. So, yeah, it's a funny time. Interesting time, but exciting time all at the same time.
Well, time float like it's almost 3 now, and we need to open.
Girls.
Yeah, and I have a lot of questions.
Okay,
still.
I'll talk fast.
No, but I'll ask
Do quick
those
fire.
later.
Yes, no.
I would like to before we open to the Q&A, we'll only have 5 minutes for the Q&A, but I would like to ask something really important, and I think the reason we put this panel discussion together is like, what would you say to the young Maori female that want to pursue the art career? Like, what would be your advice?
Part of the Māori career, or just Māori
On the
arts,
arts,
or just
on the arts? Yeah. What would be your advice or your like suggestion for those young female Maori artists that want to pursue this path?
Okay, cool. Try and do it really fast. Be authentic, just straight away. Authenticity is, let it be your story, let it be yours. Like, don't replicate, don't do anything else. Just take all the things you've learned and tell your story, because that'll never be wrong. Like, that's the thing with your own personal career. If it's in relation to street art, be prepared for street art. Street art's not as fancy as people think it is. It is so physical. It is hard work. You get no money if you're starting off. You've got to learn how to do funding. You've got to do taxes. You've got to learn how to use accounting systems if you're doing it the right way. Street art, if you want to be a street artist, go to business school, go and hang out at mural projects and see how hard it is, because that's the only way you're going to learn. It's like, I'm going to turn up to a wall. It'll take 2 days. It rained at things. I ran out of budget. Yeah, street art is way more than just painting a mural. So be prepared for that. In terms of being wahine or Māori, for myself, I personally don't put that into a category and separate that out as a wahine Māori or an artist. I think that just all gets down to that authenticity of something. So yeah, I don't, just be you. If you're wahine, if you're tani, yeah. But be prepared for what the only part of that is, as a female, be prepared for what comes with that. Because you generally get put into certain categories subconsciously, and you've got to be quite prepared for that emotionally, because a lot of females are very sensitive, and yeah, you've got to be a little bit tough-skinned in the street art realm. So I'm talking about, don't know what the fine art word looks like. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, is that fast enough? It's like,
well, thank you, Janine, for sharing all of that with us.
Thanks.
And for all of those in Facebook, we're going to start a Q&A. We'll have 5 minutes to, for you to ask whatever you want to Janine with us today. And you also have until the 22nd of April to visit Here and Out here at Toi Poneke Gallery. So I have a question here for you, Janine. Could you tell us more about the geometric symbology in your murals?
Geometric. Oh, okay. I take Māori design. I really love working on the background of our murals. Charles is amazing at the birds and the subject matter, and I love the backgrounds. And so they tend to be very contemporary, enlarged versions of Māori design. Yeah. I think having travelled through the Pacific and obviously being Māori, you understand, I guess, the whakapapa of design goes quite the way back, and geometric imagery is very Māori as much as the kurus and the flowing ko whai, and so that sort of contemporary, bold Māori design. Yeah. So like, like a kao and tuku would tend to be like this, whereas I just go, just one will do. Yeah. And so people, oh, look, a triangle. So, yeah. If you asked us the story, then we could tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a cool thing about there's always good stories behind those lines. Yeah. Is there any other question? Yeah, there's another question. Do you feel that urban art is a form of protest?
Yes. Because you're either saying something about yourself or something else. Like, is an urban, because you're either like a protest.
Yeah, like a form of protest.
I mean, it is, but it's not always a form of protest. Yeah, because it depends. Are they talking about graffiti, street art?
This is a pretty general question about urban arts, but you can reply with the one that you feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, I don't think always. Not right now. Yeah, you tend to know if someone's trying to say something in a way it's protesting compared to, oh, look at the butterflies. Yeah, so not always.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, and for you, did you use before or are you using at the moment your personal practice as a way of protesting for anything?
I wouldn't say protest, but I would say an invitation to communication.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm inviting you into a conversation about this kaupapa. If you don't want to, that's okay. So it's not really a protest. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And yeah, those were the questions.
Thanks everyone for this really.
And if there's no more questions from the public in Facebook, the time is over now.
Wow.
Because it seems like TV here. But it's been so interesting to listen to you, Janine, and talk to you. You have so much important things, I reckon, to say. And thanks for being with us. Thanks, Charles, for coming with Janine as well.
Shout out.
Like undercover. And thanks all of you that that watched this through Facebook on Toi Poneke Facebook, and thanks to the team behind the scenes, and thanks to Antonio and Wolf that are with us today. This was our last panel discussion from here on out. There's been a lot of work behind these panel discussions and a lot of interesting conversations. Thank you all for being part of this and for being part of Here and Out. And as I said before, I will say again, the exhibition is open until the 22nd of April, so you still have a couple of weeks to check it out. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you, Janine.
Thanks. Yeah.
And see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Ciao. Bye.